Hello, and welcome to another edition of First Take, where we interview experts in the world of spine. I'm your host, Brian Woodington, and today we have an exciting interview with Dr. Juan Uribe, neurosurgeon out of Barrow Neurological Institute. We'll discuss the state of spine care as a whole and different emerging technologies that are fueled by AI and machine learning and what their potential impact can be on spine and the treatment of patients. So with that said, please enjoy the interview. Well, Dr. Uribe, thanks for taking the time with us today to talk about EOS and its impact on your practice.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So to kick things off, could you share some of your thoughts on how you see spine surgery's evolution while you've been practicing in your career and where the greatest improvements have been?
Yeah, so spine has been changing dramatically since I started my practice. I've been probably as an active spine surgeon almost 20 years, and I can tell you that probably the biggest advances has been obviously better understanding of the spine conditions, but the innovation not only on the implants but also on the imaging has been outstanding. Nowadays, for example, the ability to, fuse CTs with MRI, but then be able to obtain low radiation, full body X-rays, what the EOS can bring to us is an amazing advance. The fact that we can see the spine as a whole, be able to understand how the spine interact with the pelvis, with the craniocervical junction, and also the extremities. That's, for example, a unique advantage of the changes that having happened on the spine world as I've been practicing. And a lot of things that we do right now is because these incremental changes, and EOS is one of them.
What are the biggest challenges you see? Obviously, huge strides, like you said, in the OR landscape and some of the technologies there, but what do you think still needs to improve? Yeah,
there is obviously, we're learning every day. What makes the spine fascinating is that it's a moving target. What we're doing today in 2 years will be obsolete. So, for example, taking advantage of the new generation systems, let's say AI, be able to predict how the spine is going to behave instead of just doing your cases and then having the surprise if you really made your objectives. With the introduction of EOS and putting together predictive analytics, be able to predict or at least understand how that spine is going to behave depending on what procedure you will doing, that's a big change. And I think that's going to drive a lot of the spine outcomes in the future.
And hearing that, I appreciate that outlook. Was that a big part of the decision to invest in EOS Edge technology in the first place?
Absolutely. If you have navigation, robotics, latest implants, but you don't have something that bring the information that EOS bring you, it's like you're walking but limping. So the EOS is, to me, especially in deformities, closing the full circle. And the EOS, what I like it is that it's a platform that is ready to be applied into the AI and be able to combine with all the other enabling technologies.
Yeah, and could you touch on what your protocol is? Is every patient getting an EOS? Is it a full body? What kind of image are you capturing for your patients?
Yeah, I'm being lucky that I have, unconditional and straightforward access to EOS. And because I see the value of having full view of the spine, even for a patient with that we call degen problem, cervical or lumbar, be able to understand how all the spine is behaving, the compensatory mechanisms, makes a totally different approach to that patient. Many times we get used to look just what the problem is, that we supposedly think that that's the problem, but a lot of times we are just dealing with the consequence. If you look more into the spine or into the extremities, you find a lot of answers that we didn't have it before. So basically, without the EOS, it's like we were sitting in a pile of gold without knowing that we were sitting on it. I just can't believe that I was doing all these cases for more than 10, 15 years, and I was ignoring the pelvis, the extremities, or if I was in the lumbar spine, I was like assuming that the thoracic and the cervical spine were good, which it was a limitation of the technology. Now that problem doesn't happen anymore. So to me, EOS it becomes the gold standard for imaging of any patient. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be a deformity patient. Degen patients have a lot of potential to become deformity. And when you look at the adult spinal deformity, most of those patients start without deformity. They develop it in the last 5-10 years. So a lot of those patients has 1-2 level fusions 10-15 years ago. I always wanted to know if you did it different, that 10-15 years ago, the patient will not end up with this deformity. And wanted to know what was the result if that patient has an EOS at that time. I'm sure that a lot of them will be having a different procedures, different solutions than what they had.
Absolutely. It's amazing to hear how the ability to easily acquire a full body global assessment image of a patient has transformed patient care, and that it's applicable across the board to your patients. So I think that's a transformation a lot of surgeons are going through and practices as a whole. And I think it's really special and important to the advancement evolution of spine surgery.
Yeah, and the important thing is that you have these full body x-rays with fraction of the exposure of just say that's a lumbar spine x-rays. So you're not having this one at expenses of putting the patients under more risk of radiation exposure. It's just technology at your disposal.
Yeah. And from an alignment perspective, a global assessment alignment perspective, how important is that to you to measure and calculate different sagittal parameters, like you said, compensatory mechanisms and such?
Yeah, so everybody wants to have all the spino-pelvic alignments. Everybody wants to have all the measurements. The problem is that two reasons are the limitations. One is time. When you start trying to measure this manually, it takes a lot of time. And the way that the healthcare system is nowadays, we need to have a lot of volume. And when you have 30 patients in a clinic day, and if you want to manually measure every parameter on every patient, you don't finish your clinic. So as important and is the alignment, having the advantage of that automated, the delivery of this parameter comes to you in a very objective manner, and coming from an image that is from the entire body is a big difference.
Yeah, and thanks for that feedback. I know you're personally excited about the recent launch of EOS Insight and the clinical applications in that platform. Can you share a few other thoughts on what's is most important looking forward, and what you're most excited about?
Yeah, what is exciting about EOS is that just the imaging is just like the foundation. what it comes around is actually the future and the application where it really makes an impact in our practices in our patients. The ability, for example, of having an immediate assessment of the alignment. I know that very soon we will be able to know at the same time the bone quality, which when you're a deformity surgeon, you know that the bone quality is, one of the biggest parameters on you decided to do surgery or not, and be able to have all this information up front at your disposal is invaluable.
Absolutely. From a pre-surgical planning perspective, what are your thoughts on the ability to easily and seamlessly plan your surgery with a 3D model?
Yeah, so integrating that, the EOS images with the alignment objectives is becoming actually something that is possible. I mean, 5 years ago it was like a dream, but which is more important is that now actually the intraoperative reconciliation is going to be possible, because one thing is what you can draw in a board and playing with a software to real life. When you put in your software a 15-degree cage and you're thinking that give you 15-degree lordosis, that the real life is different. Spine behaves different. You don't know how the posterior elements are behaving, if there is a fusion, if that facets are mobile, if the ligaments are more rigid or not, if you're able to actually achieve the amount of osteotomies that you were thinking. So all these factors need to be reconciliated and real time. So the EOS has the potential that intra-op you can reconciliate that information and you have a more clear picture of where are you at and if you're meeting your goals of that particular case.
Yeah, and sort of an alignment confirmation.
Correct.
And post-operatively, right, the idea that capturing an EOS edge scan afterwards feeds into the analytics of the platform. What value do you think that could bring?
Yeah. That one is obviously close the circle, yeah. So the only way to have a good answer of what we plan preoperative is to be able to analyze in a very objective manner the postoperative images. So the only way that you can get actually results, and you can, more than anything, you can feed the computers correctly for the AI, is to having the postoperative imaging. And when you have all these measurements actually automated, you take the bias of the surgeon, because we as a surgeons, we like to see things good when it's your own patient and we just post-op. But when you have these objective measurements, it becomes more objective. And our research becomes also more honest. And the numbers that come from that and the data that come from that is going to be the data that is going to feed the computers so we can have the AI information.
And do you think that data is part of the key to unlocking a sort of the next step in spine care?
Absolutely. If we don't have data, if we don't collect, thousands of cases, and we don't put them together in an objective way with the same imaging, with the same cuts, with the same parameters, then we don't know what is next. Today we think that these parameters needs to be met, but we need to validate them, and the only way to validate them is doing a lot of cases, put them together in a scale, and that's one of the new, I would say, features of EOS. Once you have your EOS machine, you're part of this ecosystem where you can be part of all these big data on postoperative cases, and then you don't only learn more, but also you become one of the members of how you going to change and modified what we're doing on the spine today.
Absolutely. And in conclusion here, and again, thank you for the time. What do you think the biggest opportunities are forward-looking with this technology and with this information available with some of the advancements?
Yeah, so obviously advancements is you can translate all these into new materials, indications. I hope that with all this data, we end up doing smaller cases. We tend to think as a deformity surgeon that T10 to pelvis is the answer for 90% of the people, but I know that if we have better understanding and more information of the spine, I'm sure that a lot of those T10 to pelvis are maybe L2 to L5, or even some of them just standalone cases. And the only way that we have that answers is by collecting all this data and then applying what we learn. So, but I can tell you, I'm 100% sure that T10 to pelvis is not the answer. And that's why we have all these known complications, the phenomenon of the proximal junction failure, this, pelvic failures, all these things that comes with only the T10 to pelvis cases most of the time. Sometimes is obviously we don't have a good understanding what is the alignment, what is the goals, and second, I'm sure that sometimes we do more surgery than we need to. So the EOS is going to help us to solve a lot of those questions.
And it'll be incredibly exciting to see what comes from it.
Absolutely. I just cannot wait to see.
Yeah. That'll wrap up our time today. Thank you so much for your insights and, sort of your window in to what this technology can bring.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. And I can tell you, you're a spine surgeon and you don't have access to EOS, you're not really doing it right.